I'm going to keep this review spoiler free because the movie just came out. That said, I'm a firm believer in only watching movie trailers one time and not listening to even spoiler free reviews or even reading anything about a movie before I see it. Because even in spoiler free reviews, they can still give something away that maybe you didn't want to know. I'm going to try to avoid all of that and just speak in very general terms. I'll start out by saying that I actually really liked it, but it wasn't perfect. I felt it was good about 3/4 of the way through, and then it didn't quite stick the landing, but it wasn't enough for me to say I didn't like the movie, or even say it was just an okay movie. Robert Pattinson was about what I expected his Batman was going to be. Very different than all the other portrayals of Batman on the big screen. In this one, he is definitely messed up. He is depressed, maybe even suicidal. Whereas in other Batman movies, he has like rich guy problems, right? Oh no, women only like him because he's rich. Or he has to dress up and go to balls and crap. Or he's alcoholic or whatever. In this one, he is mentally disturbed, which is more realistic for somebody that would be Batman. It actually reminded me a lot of the comic books. I also liked Catwoman, the Penguin, the Riddler, Falcone. All the villains in this were excellent. The acting was excellent. And Catwoman isn't really a villain, obviously. But, I mean, the whole cast, acting-wise, was very good. There's nobody that stood out as a weak link. And some of my favorite actors in this were Jeffrey Wright as Gordon. That's my favorite Gordon, for sure. And Andy Serkis as Alfred is my favorite Alfred. He was excellent in this. He actually seems like a badass. And I liked his and Batman's relationship. I liked how grounded in reality everything was. Except for a few of the plot elements, especially towards the end. Maybe not so much. And that only stands out because as I was watching this movie, I didn't feel like I was watching a superhero movie. This has more in common with films like Seven, Zodiac, maybe even a little bit of Saw in there. This is a straight up detective versus a serial killer movie. And I really liked that, but it might turn some people off that are expecting a super action-packed superhero film, because this is not that. The director's previous films include the sequels to Planet of the Apes, the remakes, which were excellent, Let Me In, which is a vampire film, and Cloverfield. So you kind of get an idea of what kind of films this guy makes. Yes, there's action, but the action isn't the reason that this movie is made, right? Like when I think about the Planet of the Apes movies, yeah, there was good action in them, but when I think back on them, that's not what I liked about them. It was more of the mood, the atmosphere, and the storyline. And this movie is very dark. The Riddler in this does not seem like a comic book character. He seems like a real life villain. And it's scary. This movie is kind of terrifying. It's not for kids. Even though I think it's rated PG-13, it did not seem that way when I was watching it. It's very disturbing. On the same level as like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger, but even more realistic. Except for the very, very end. And honestly, if I were to rank it amongst those Nolan films, I'd say it's definitely better than Batman Begins. It's better than The Dark Knight Rises. Not quite as rewatchable as the second one though, The Dark Knight, but it's more on that level compared to all the other Batman films. If you like The Dark Knight, you'll probably like this, but it's not quite as good or as rewatchable. And lastly, I really liked the use of music in this, like Ave Maria and that theme. That theme definitely got stuck in my head. You know, I'm like brushing my teeth and I'm hearing dun 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 dun. Or like I'm pumping gas and dun 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 dun. Buying milk at the grocery store, dun 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 dun. I thought it was cool. They overused it maybe a little bit, but it was so cool, you know, with the imagery of the movie and everything that I didn't mind that as much because it is a cool theme. Overall, I would recommend it, but it's not perfect, and I think some people might actually hate this movie because it's not as action-packed as they'd hope. But if you go in understanding that it's not a cartoony action movie, then you might not be let down. Overall, I would give this about a 7.5 out of 10.